Hello and thanks to everyone who's checking this video out. As you can see, the video is of Rainbow Six and me practicing Terrorist Hunt here on realistic difficulty. I finally beat it after like 30 tries. It's a really good challenge, but the video isn't about what you see. It's more about the commentary here. I'll have more video of Last of Us after this, just because this video is going to go on pretty long here. So again, the video isn't about the video, it's about the commentary, and the commentary is going to be about what I think is the most important online shooter, not only for PlayStation, but for online shooters in general. So that game is SOCOM, US Navy SEALs. It was on the PS2 and later on the PS3. And we'll be talking about both those systems, and we'll be talking about why it isn't on the PS4 and why it should be. So I wanted to make the first video on my gaming channel to be about something very important to me. I'm a huge PlayStation fan. Some of my favorite games, from Metal Gear Solid to The Last of Us, Journey, Uncharted, God of War, Ico, Gran Turismo, The Walking Dead, Portal, Red Dead. I can keep going. So all the way back to the PS1 with Colony Wars, Disruptor, Resident Evil, and Tomb Raider. And we'll end with Crash Bandicoot. I'll end with Crash Bandicoot because it was very good timing for that, because at E3 last month, Sony just announced that they're bringing back Crash Bandicoot. So thanks to Sony for bringing that back. It does show that they do listen to customers, they do listen to their fans, to the gamers. Obviously it takes time to bring games back, and it takes demand as well, and it takes a developer that's willing to bring those games back. So with all that in mind, let's talk about SOCOM. So the point is, I love the art form. I love a lot of games. I have a lot of respect for great artists and pieces of art as well. But I'm also very competitive, and I've loved competitive games for almost 2 decades now, starting with a few years of Doom, CounterStrike, Team Fortress, and Quake. 6 years of Unreal Tournament. That game was amazing. And then falling in love with SOCOM on the PS2, which revolutionized online gaming in many ways, some of which I don't believe even Sony truly realizes. This is what I'll explain in this video. After you play SOCOM, it's just so difficult to go back to other online shooters and not see all the missing features. 15 years after SOCOM's release, it is still ahead of its time. What do I mean by that, and can that really be true? Again, I'll explain all these unfortunate facts in this video from the perspective of someone that has played online shooters since the very first one. Yes, Mr. Yoshida, the president of Sony Worldwide Studios, and a few other people at Sony know by now that fans want this game to return, since we voted for the game to come back many times. On the official PlayStation Share blog, SOCOM 1 and SOCOM 2 were the 2 most requested things from all PlayStation fans, with 14,000 positive votes for SOCOM 2 HD. On the official European PlayStation blog, SOCOM 2 was voted the best PS2 game of all time, even edging out MGS2, MGS3, and GTA San Andreas. On the PS4 itself, we have a maximum amount of people, 10,000, in a community called Socom Remastered, as well as other SOCOM communities with other thousands of fans left wondering what happened to this revolutionary and still revolutionary series. I'll explain why it's still revolutionary in a minute. On other more recent social media campaigns set up by Sony, such as hashtag building the list and PS2 to PS4, fans have made it clear just how missed SOCOM is. But we haven't made it clear why SOCOM is the biggest missed opportunity in PlayStation 4's portfolio. Twitter isn't the best place to make a detailed, complex argument, so this is what this video is for. I played SOCOM for over 10 years, regularly, or religiously I should say, from SOCOM 1 through SOCOM 4, until the final day when SOCOM Confrontation and SOCOM 4 servers were shut down. Needless to say, I think we've shown Sony more than enough proof that we want SOCOM to return, but I don't think we've done a good enough job to tell them why SOCOM is needed, and why the PS3 SOCOM games were not as successful as the PS2 ones. I think it's a good way to start with a quote that Mr. Yoshida said when responding to the request for SOCOM, which will help lead into my argument. Mr. Yoshida said, quote, "Online games have moved on, so much quality and production values, everything is way, way higher. People have great memories of playing these games many years ago, but people's experiences have moved on as well. So even if they say that they had a great time and they want to experience it again, they may not know how much higher their own expectations have become." So he's saying, Expectations for games have become bigger these days. I bring this quote up because I want to show developers how competitive gamers' expectations are actually lower now after SOCOM raised the bar higher than any game since its release. I understand what you mean by production values and qualities such as Uncharted's breathtaking action and cinematics, or Battlefield's powerful Frostbite engine and destruction. But amazing production values are not the essential things when making a tactical and competitive online shooter. There are other, more important things to consider. Other features that many shooters today do not have, features that SOCOM had in spades. I want to bring up CounterStrike as well, because it is the perfect example of a pure, simple, but amazingly competitive shooter that has had low production values for 2 decades, and yet it has remained at the top of the PC market for all of those years, and it's the #1 shooter on Twitch still today. Why is this? I know it's because of the truly competitive, non-respawn based gameplay, which naturally promotes teamwork and competition. It offers no assists. Instead, it respects the player's ability to get better at the game without assists. It has what is known as a very high skill ceiling, similar to Rocket League and SOCOM. Obviously, Rocket League is a totally different kind of game, but that's a big part of its success, how easy it is to get into, but how high the skill ceiling for that game is. You can always improve and always get better at the game, that's what brings players back to that game over and over. Same deal with SOCOM, same deal with Counter-Strike. That's why people still want this game. SOCOM was built on the foundation of Counter-Strike, and if you ask the original creators of SOCOM, it was directly inspired by Counter-Strike, and it took Counter-Strike's features and tactical game modes to a whole new level. So let's talk about those amazing features that SOCOM had, and the high expectations that SOCOM brought to the market. Expectations that have not been exceeded, nor even met, by any shooter since SOCOM's release. Let's start with social features. SOCOM, since its debut on the PS2, had more social features than any other shooter, and 15 years later, it still does. SOCOM was the first game that came packaged with a microphone, and it set the PS2 Online on fire. Players logged more daily hours into SOCOM 2 Online than Halo and all of Xbox Live combined. This was a proud fact that Sony released, and IGN.com reported on it. I'll post a link to that article and a few other important links in the description below this video. Feel free to check them out if you need any further proof of SOCOM's dominance and importance after this video. The headset that came with SOCOM wasn't only used to speak to your own team, but while you're in the lobby, you could speak to the enemy team. Why was this important? Simply, competition. Competition thrives when you get to know your competitors. I've made many friends with whom I played against because I was able to communicate with them on SOCOM and get to know them. This just isn't possible in most shooters today, as communication is limited and matchmaking is the norm. Instead of having lobbies which you can enter and get to know people on both teams over multiple games, players would often return to the same lobbies and servers in SOCOM to meet with and against the same teams of players. A few other games do this lobby system, but not many, and none did it better than SOCOM did it. There's a huge game that was released in 2014, for example, which did not even allow you to communicate with your whole team. This was later patched and changed due to player feedback, but it is just one example that shows you that social and competitive gamers have had to temper and lower our expectations after SOCOM's release. Our expectations have definitely not been raised nor met by modern shooters, quite the opposite, and I give you more examples of that all over this video. Not only did SOCOM have microphones and lobbies to get to know everyone and build competitive and team relationships, it also had a robust text chat feature within the lobby and during the game as well. You could not only send messages to everyone in the lobby, but you could also speak to your team privately to talk strategy before the game started. You could also have taunts, custom text taunts, and voiceover taunts. SOCOM was the king of the victory dances, which seem to be making a comeback in games. Uncharted 4 and Overwatch, for example, have some very funny victory dances and one-liners, but SOCOM is still the king for funky dances and funny voice taunts on any PlayStation game I've seen. It just oozed personality, and these features stacked upon each other brought rivalries and matches to even higher levels of intensity and just pure competitive fun. I mentioned lobbies as a social feature, but custom lobbies are also a very important competitive feature because they allow teams or clans to meet up and set up true competitive matches, not just random battles against random people who may or may not be an actual organized team. I've played many other games where I join with my team and we were just playing against random people who aren't organized and frankly just can't keep up with a team that is playing together and is communicating tactics with each other. SOCOM allowed for in-game setup of true competitive matches versus other true teams. You didn't need to go to game battles, MLG, or ESL to set up a great match. You could see people's clan tags in-game, and you could set up a custom lobby looking for a 6v6 clan war, or an 8 versus 8 clan war, for example. This is something that seems very simple at first glance, but very few games allow you to do a 2v2 game if you want to, or a 7 versus 7. SOCOM could be molded to fit your team's needs for competitive play at all times. That cannot be said about many other games. Now, I just mentioned game battles and MLG. Speaking of game battles, here's a fun fact. GameBattles.com was first known as SocomBattles.com. Yes, you heard that right. SOCOM was the game that created what would later become Game Battles and MLG. Again, the importance and the competitive level of this game cannot be stressed enough. The game promoted such teamwork and competition that gamers took to the internet to create official, even more organized matches, tournaments, and ladders, where we could keep track of who exactly the best teams were, and where we could meet up with even better teams and even more intense competition than we could already find in the game. This was the beginning of esports for PlayStation. This shows you the competitive spirit of gamers and how much gamers want a game that challenges their team skill against other teams. Again, games today are trying to do this by promoting team play, but no game had the in-game features that truly allowed for this kind of environment in team play more than SOCOM did. Custom lobbies also allowed for the ability to create custom matches, which meant you could do handguns only battle, a snipers only battle, shotguns and grenades only, etc. This level of customization is sadly not seen in other shooters, and that lacking competitive variety is definitely missed by players that played SOCOM and expect some more fun or competitive custom options in other shooters. So a lot of games have a variety of cosmetic customization and stuff like that, but competitive customization is very important as well. So you can actually make competitive matches and customize the game how you want it to play. You get more variety out of the game that way, not just cosmetic variety. You get competitive variety.
Someone cover me while I take care of this.
Finally, let's talk about one more feature that many shooters of today frankly just forget to include, and that's clan features. This is not only a competitive feature, but a social one as well. SOCOM allowed you to not only create clans from within the game and to display those clan tags, but you could also send important messages to your whole clan and to set various levels of leadership within that clan. Each player would have an inbox which they could send messages to any of their friends as well. You could also text chat during the game and to the enemy team, which again helped the game feel more like a community rather than just a game versus random people you couldn't even communicate with. Basically, SOCOM excelled in its communication features. Just because we have voice chat doesn't mean we should leave behind text chat and other forms of interaction and personality. It's frankly sad that I have to mention clan tags, but the simple fact is that most team shooters out there today do not even offer the ability to put a clan tag on your character within the game or at all. Some other games force you to have to go to an external source like a website just to create a clan or to accept a clan invite. SOCOM not only had clan tags within the game, but full clan features and support for true team versus team play. So this is the biggest thing here. I find it very, very puzzling that the most popular and competitive shooter on the PC, Counter-Strike, does not have much competition on the console market. Yes, Rainbow Six offers some tactical, no respawn, no aim assist teamwork, which me and some of my SOCOM buddies love. But SOCOM added so many social, competitive, and custom features on top of that, which should make the deal so much sweeter. Again, I'm not here to hate on other games. I love many of these games that I'm comparing to SOCOM, but I think constructive criticism is important, and I'm not afraid to speak up when I see so much missing from a genre of gaming I love. I will be giving more direct constructive criticism to those other games in other videos, but this video is about SOCOM. More specifically, it's about why gamers want SOCOM to return, and why it would be wise of Sony to bring it back after looking at all the evidence. So without mentioning all those other games directly, I'll just say this so Sony realizes what they have in their pocket. SOCOM is the only shooter on PlayStation with clan tags, clan features, competitive matches, custom matches, and no aim assist, no radar, no other perks or unlocks. It is a straight up battle between two evenly matched teams. Similar to Counter-Strike, the lack of respawning is what promotes even more careful tactical play, as does the recoil of the weapons, which made it a skill to truly master the game. So this is a big part of the reason why Counter-Strike has stayed on top of the PC market, and it's the most popular esports shooter on Twitch TV as well today. So again, I keep bringing up Counter-Strike because SOCOM was inspired by it, and SOCOM was huge on the PlayStation, just like Counter-Strike is still huge on the PC. So why didn't SOCOM stay successful on the PlayStation market? Yes, times changed and tastes changed a little, but SOCOM itself was changed. And other external issues prevented it from staying as successful as the previous PS2 SOCOM games were. This is one of the most important factors which I don't think Sony realizes, and the reason they don't see it, I think, is because they weren't in the game playing it as closely as the gamers themselves, so they probably didn't even know about many of these small details. For example, I don't think Mr. Yoshida plays competitive tactical shooters for dozens of hours per month, but I do know he loves Bloodborne. So let's use Bloodborne as an example to make my points about why the latter PS3 SOCOM games were not afforded the chance to live up to the previous PS2 games. So first let's start with SOCOM Confrontation, which was released on the PS3. I played SOCOM Confrontation for years, so I know the ins and outs of it, but many SOCOM fans didn't like the changes, the much slower game speed being the main one, along with the many glitches, which endured in the game for many months until most of them were patched. Most importantly, the game froze PS3 consoles on average of 1 or 2 times a night for about 6 months straight. Again, I know this because I came back to the game almost every night for a couple years. So to make the analogy with Bloodborne, imagine if an online-only Bloodborne game called Bloodborne Confrontation, for example, came out and had a much slower game speed, many glitches which prevent you from traversing the environment and attacking your opponents effectively. And on top of that, imagine if the game froze your PlayStation and required to restart every hour or two, until 6 months after release, where it is finally patched. On top of that, a major PS3 hack, or jailbreak, was released during Confrontation's lifetime, which started infesting the game with cheaters who'd have unlimited health, they could fly, and worst of all, they could freeze lobbies for hundreds of gamers in a few minutes. It is not an exaggeration to say that thousands of gamers were kicked off of SOCOM Confrontation so many times that they just didn't want to come back anymore. This doesn't just affect those gamers though, it also affected sales because again, SOCOM is about teamwork, it's a team game, it's a clan game, it's about community. So word spreads fast, and you shouldn't underestimate word of mouth. And I think that's another huge factor which led to SOCOM Confrontation selling a lot less than the previous games. I think all these things are important to bring up because they're things that Sony really needs to see before they can understand, SOCOM didn't fail because people don't want this kind of game anymore or our expectations are higher or things like that. This game failed because of external issues, because of issues that plagued the game and covered the game instead of letting the game shine like it was shining on the PS2. Again, I don't think you'd expect a Bloodborne Confrontation to have the sales success or the reputation of the original Bloodborne with all of those issues piled on top of it. Regardless, SOCOM Confrontation still sold well over 1 million units in the end. The core of the game still shined through the immense issues of its first 6 months and on. SOCOM 4 released a couple years later, on April 19, 2011. I try to emphasize that date because that date should be very familiar to Sony, because this was the exact time that the PlayStation Network was attacked and shut down. The PlayStation Network would not come back up until almost a whole month later. This definitely affected SOCOM 4's success, as many fans who were already upset with SOCOM Confrontation's issues were even more hesitant to give SOCOM 4 a chance. Besides the major networking issues which hurt SOCOM 4's launch and its momentum for its first and most important month, Most of the major tactical SOCOM game modes were not in SOCOM 4, nor was a realistic recoil system for the guns. A cover system was added, which hindered the game, while lobbies and clan features were missing. Again, let's compare this to Bloodborne. Imagine if a Bloodborne 4, so to speak, came out, and all its online features were down for a month, on top of the game missing so many of the main features, the main competitive and social features, all of the previous games had. And imagine if Bloodborne had a cover system, where you could peek out and line up shots on enemies without any sense of danger, while the aiming after the first few hits would be randomized instead of tactical. The competitive level of SOCOM 4 was drastically reduced compared to previous games. So let's do a recap. Both the PS3 SOCOM games had major technical issues, and SOCOM 4 had an identity issue on top of that, where it left too many features behind in favor of a more casual approach. I understand that some games are aimed at a more casual crowd, but millions of gamers have played shooters on the PlayStation for 5, 10, even 15 years now. I still remember the classic underrated Disruptor on the PS1 by Insomniac Games, and who can forget Medal of Honor on the PS1 as well. The point is, give these millions of experienced first and third person shooter gamers the opportunity to flex their skills and to improve their skills on more difficult games and game modes too. I respect casual gamers and games, but the message of this video is please do not forget the competitive gamers as well, who have been with PlayStation for years and are looking for more than what is out there right now. As someone who loves competition, it really is upsetting to see hardcore modes in online games, yet these hardcore modes still have tons of assists. The beauty of games like SOCOM and CounterStrike, and even games like Rocket League, is that they have a high skill ceiling because they have very few assists. These things alone promote teamwork and competition, and it's why those games are very addictive and popular with so many gamers. You always want to improve because you can improve. The game does not limit your potential, nor your teammates or your competition's potential, by giving you so many assists. Tactical, competitive shooter fans are left wanting more from today's shooters, and Sony is in a position to deliver that, and to deliver a huge game to the market. The same exact game that originated esports for PlayStation. And the only PlayStation game I've seen over the past 20 years that has the built-in features which would take today's competitive gaming to the next level, just like it did 15 years ago. You just have to stay true to your roots, keep the same amazing competitive and social features the original games have, and release the game without the major networking issues, unwanted gameplay changes, and without the major freezing and technical issues. I still haven't seen a game with more in-game social integration, more competitive, custom clan and tournament features than SOCOM had in 2002. That alone should speak volumes, that a game released a decade and a half ago had way more than any other games do today. Thank you for your time. I know this was a long video, but to understand the reasons behind SOCOM's struggle, you do need to look at the details. And these are the same details which can help Sony bring SOCOM back to huge success and to huge praise from tactical shooter fans. So Sony, I hope this video helped you understand the true reasons that SOCOM faltered. And I know it can also help you expand upon the features that made SOCOM the most important and captivating online shooter in history. You know, you don't only have to bring SOCOM back, but you can make it even better by building upon what made it awesome. Again, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Feel free to watch the rest of it if you'd like, but the commentary will end here soon. I'll be sending this video not only to my SOCOM friends and SOCOM fans in general, but also to various game developers, because I think it's important for developers to hear the gamer's point of view, especially when a lot of developers don't usually have the time to play these competitive games as much as hardcore gamers do. I hope Sony sees the potential and the amazing opportunity they have with SOCOM, and I hope they actively work to find a developer that is interested in taking competitive gaming to the next level. The gamers spoke for Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy VII, and many other games to return, but no PlayStation game has been requested to return more than SOCOM, and no game is needed more in the online gaming market more than SOCOM. So here's my final plea. I hope that by next year's E3, we'll at least hear an announcement for a classic style SOCOM game returning and finally taking competitive shooters on PlayStation even further than it did way back in 2002. Thank you.
The objective is now active.
I'm taking the objective. Get over here.
Acknowledged. Okay. Need healing. I need healing. Need healing. This time, I'll finish the job.
The objective is under attack. Our objective.
I will feast on their souls.
Keep your heads down. We've almost got this. So now, and defeat.
I hunger.
Securing the objective. Full visor activated.